Hi everyone. I'm Subra Isran, and welcome to another episode of YPO Presents. I'm Deputy Chairman of Eastern T and founding member director of Carbon Consulting and the Conservation Carbon Company. I've been a YPO member for well over 7 years now, and I'm the Network Engagement Officer for YPO's Planet Action Network. It's a community of like-minded leaders striving to really make a positive impact on our planet by connecting to create scalable solutions and promoting best practices for protecting the earth within the membership. So today, as everybody knows, is Earth Day, and we're really excited to welcome two global leaders and fellow members of YPO's Planet Action Network, Nima Fodwat and Sanjay Shah. Nima is co-founder and president at Riverside Natural Foods, which makes some amazing natural food brands, which produces some amazing natural food products. And Sanjay is managing director of international markets at HSBC Singapore, private banking Singapore. So welcome, Nima and Sanjay.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So good to have you guys here on Earth Day. So before we get started, we'd like to remind all of you watching to ask our guests any questions that you may have by posting them in the comments section. And if you're not following us already, please do so when you receive a notification about when our next episode begins on YPO Connect. So Nima and Sanjay, can I ask you both to just give a brief introduction about yourself and the work that you're doing and how you personally are connected with sustainability in your professional and personal life. So Sanjay, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you. So by way of introduction, I work in the private bank. Private banking has been my career, so has led a professional life for the last 20 years of my being. While we do private banking, we do touch upon various aspects of sustainability, and we'll talk about it as we go through the discussion. But to me, sustainability as a topic and as a theme has hit me in a big way since I joined YPO, which is now just about a year ago. And I would say one of the biggest influencers for me to getting carried away in this big wide world of sustainability are fellow YPOers and people who are like-minded and who think of business as a force for good, as a living. It is a lifestyle. It is the way they run businesses. It's the way they interact with people and the community and so on and so forth. So it has bitten me in a very positive manner in the last 1 year, and hence I've taken it mainstream within everything I do within my business and my life.
Okay, fantastic. And Nima?
Thanks. My name is Nima Fodwat. I'm, along with my sisters, co-founded Riverside Natural Foods. And as I recall, from the time we started the business in my parents' basement, we said we want to do something that has all stakeholders in mind, or a triple bottom line organization, that we look at our impact on the planet as well as people alongside making a profit. And I think, as we'll get into it, it's something we're passionate about as individuals first, and we've infused it in our business, and we've built a business that it's progress, not perfection, but embedding sustainability into everything we do, and looking forward to a lively discussion today.
Okay, great. I mean, thank you for sharing that. So the theme for Earth Day 2021 is Restore the Earth. What does Restore the Earth mean to you as business leaders? And what is a recent innovation or initiative that your company has implemented to restore the Earth? Nima, can we start with you? And please tell us a little bit about some of the amazing work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great theme, first of all. I think the word restore points to the fact that we have to repair the damage done as well as stop or as beyond just stopping or the damage that we are doing. So it's a two-step approach. You gotta get to a net zero, and then you gotta go to we gotta go towards a net positive. An example of that, and it's not sustainability. Is not just about the environment. To me, it's people. It's people and environment, and it's hard to create a sustainable world if people are in poverty. It doesn't work. It can't exclude the people element of it. The example I want to talk about is we're in a consumer packaged goods business. We make granola bars and other salty snacks, crackers. And so what happens is we package everything in obviously plastic. So there is right off the bat, we are net negative in the plastic we put out into the environment. And so we've gone to a point where 84% of our packaging by weight is now sustainable. So we've got 16% more to go. But then that gets us to zero. That's where we're closing the tap. Now there's water that has spilled. There's stuff in the environment. And so the cleanup is the next part of it, which to me is the restore side. The mopping, close the tap, mop the floor. We got to do both. And for us, it's trying to partner with organizations. And it's amazing what people are doing out there to get out there and try to reverse some of the work some of the damage has been done. So just around plastic, it's about removing plastic from the environment. And there are many initiatives out there, and we're trying to find a suitable partner to work with to help us offset. So our goal, look at the history of the company and how much plastic we put out there. Can we go out there in the environment and remove that plastic? So then we become a net zero for the lifetime of the company. And then any additional plastic we remove out of the environment becomes a net positive. And now we're into the restoration space.
Oh, that's amazing work, Nima. And Ajay, if you can share a little bit about the work that HSBC is doing.
It is very impressive, Nima, that you're already at 84. I think you're leading the charge on this topic and being net zero by a mile versus many other businesses and the rest of the world. So amazing stuff. Before I start diving into some of my thoughts, just a short disclaimer. The views that I'm expressing here are those that are mine and not of the bank. I was briefed by my compliance team to say so I'm saying it. Anyways, moving to your question, Subra, I would like to break it into two parts. One is what does the term restore the earth mean to the bank, everything that we do within our business, and then I have a take which is my personal take. I'll start with the bank's take, and some of you may have seen it in some recent publications, including the investor presentation. The bank is really become extremely serious, and restore to us means reduce, replace, and remove. We are committing to be net zero, similar to what Nima said, by 2030 for our internal operations, and by 2050 for everything that we do, including our business activities with our client. So the first big jump and a milestone is by towards end of 2030 from a net zero standpoint. The internal stance we are taking is we want to be very realistic about what is it that we are creating damage within the environment in terms of carbon footprint and everything else that is not sustainable. And we then want to take a very aggressive stance on how do we take some reactive and proactive actions to reduce, replace, and remove. And I'm going to talk about it in a second in more detail. But we also at the same time feel, and this is a message for everybody out there, which is you have either begun the journey or you need to begin the journey now. This is not something that you can achieve overnight by doing a switch on or a switch off strategy. This is a journey. It is going to take a long way out, but we need to start somewhere, and that somewhere has to start now. So this is the philosophy, this is the mindset. We also truly very firmly believe that this is not just a fashionable statement to make anymore. And hence, I'm now going to talk about few examples. What we are doing to reduce, to your question, Subra, is we have changed lighting and the way we consume electricity in every single office of HSBC in every single part of the world to be LED lighting. We all know that LEDs are much more environment friendly versus traditional lighting sources. We have also actively and proactively sought for seeking energy sources for electricity, where 37% of the energy that we consume today are coming from renewable sources and not fossil fuels, for example. So that is already in place, and we want to solve for this 37 to going up significantly to maybe close to 100%. The replace part is very, very interesting. We also are very conscious. So if you think about where do banks like us, big financial institutions consume energy, there are really two parts. One is electricity, and second is business travel. You may not believe this, but it is true because we are tracking this. And COVID has actually helped us, and we think of this as a silver lining around everything COVID. Business travel has come to a standstill. And now we are actually adopting alternative means, including everything we are doing through digital connections and Zoom and whatnot. And hence, we think that business travel is not going to go back to its original usage and utilization pre-COVID. So this is the replace part where we are replacing business travel through digital solutions. The remove part is where we still have a carbon footprint which we cannot get rid of. We are then replacing that carbon footprint through high quality offsets. So to Nima's point, if we cannot stop consuming plastic where we consume plastic, at least we want to, and we are doing our bit to replacing that carbon footprint by plantations and sustainable finance and other means. So these are examples of reduce, replace, and remove. I am emphasizing on these points because I think these things can relate to everybody, their lives and their businesses. So it could actually be a great takeaway. Moving on to the personal side, it is amazing. When you think of restore the earth, I actually translate that to, can we keep it very, very simple? And to me, the very simple part is let's just leave it alone. You know, everything that we do by damage to this planet is through our actions. And hence, if we start just leaving it alone for a bit where we can, I think we will make this world a better place to live in. Back to you.
Thank you, Sanjay. So, I mean, you guys both raised very, important points, and you're both from very different types of companies, right? So, Nima, it's very much a family-owned business. You're into food. I'm sure you know your customers very well, what their aspirations are. And Sanjay, you again, because you're in private banking, I'm sure you also know your customers. And throughout, I'm also into sustainability, and we've been trying to encode sustainability into our DNA. And the question that my board keeps asking me, and I'm sure you guys come into this, is how much do your customers really care? I mean, how much of what you're doing is really driven by customer demand, or how much of it is just your companies taking leadership, or you guys personally taking leadership? So Nima, I mean, it's a little bit of a loaded question, but I really would like to understand your reasons for doing this.
That's a great question, and I think there has to be an internal belief first and foremost. So founders, leaders have to be aligned for it to really work. If we're just doing it because it's a cool thing to do, or we're being forced to do it, I don't think you're going to do a decent job in it. And I do think the consumer does care about sustainability, but that does not mean that they will pay a premium price for an inferior product just because it's got a sustainability element to it. So you still have to deliver on everything that the consumer is looking for. Please them, And then on top of that, it's an and that sits on top of that, that then creates that brand love or loyalty, because it sets you apart a little bit maybe, or it provides them with a sense of comfort that, I'm consuming this product, but it's coming from a company that's doing their part. So it's not a replacement. It stacks up on one, from a consumer's lens. I think it stacks up on top of the core deliverables of what we are here to do. And for us as a business, it's a bit easier because we're independent, family owned. So the juices or the reasons for it are coming through directly from us, from a personal place. But I think larger companies, and Sanjay probably can speak to this, larger companies have they're getting into it, one, because of the investor side is looking for companies to do this, and B, they're probably seeing that really, if we want to be here in 20, 30, 40 years and have thriving businesses, we need to take sustainability seriously. So it's also a matter of it's becoming a matter of sort of not even thriving, but survival for a lot of industries and businesses.
Oh, thank you, Nima.
I agree with that, Nima. In fact, I think it is not a nice to have anymore, and it is almost without any choice. From my experience, I would say, from a financial investments or banking, or let's just call it the industry standpoint, I see that there is a huge transition, and we estimate that there are about $3 trillion worth of wealth which is moving from the previous generation to the next generation. And the next generation is extremely savvy and conscious about how they make their investments in their financial portfolios. And hence, even before I start or my team starts talking about financial investments, the first screen or criteria is, I would like to talk to you about financial products only if they have already gone through the ESG screening process. If they have not, then I don't want to even consider those products. That's criteria number one. Criteria number two, which I'm seeing as
sorry, Sanjay, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just explain the acronym that you just used?
ESG, so that is the environmental, social and governance impact, which is a very big acronym that we use for everything sustainability. And it is in fact almost a global standard, and it is on the back of some or all of us may know United Nations has developed some sustainability and development goals, and they are called SDGs for short. There are 17 of those. So ESG is basically the principles on which those goals have been developed and implemented.
Okay.
Yeah. Going to my second point, we have also seen a trend, which is nowadays when you buy a product which is ESG or sustainable friendly, that is not at a certain cost where they forego a certain thing in terms of return from those investments. In fact, we are seeing the exact opposite, where products which are ESG friendly, they are delivering superior returns versus products which are not ESG friendly. And that is just generally speaking because there is a higher acceptance and bigger turnover for these products. So generally, the new generation combined together with the way the world is moving, I think this is the future from a financial market standpoint, and that is where I would leave it.
Okay. No, thank you for those detailed answers. And Nima, to go back to the answer that you gave, consumers do talk up a good game, right? I'm sure over the years we have seen survey after survey which says that consumers want to buy more sustainable products, that they are willing to pay a little bit more of a premium. How do you communicate? And you've done quite a lot of work in sustainability on your products, and I'm sure a lot of that is with trying to address these questions that consumers have asked you, right? How do you communicate your work? So you guys do so much in sustainability. You have all of a granola bar, you have a small part of the granola bar to talk about your sustainability on that. How do you communicate that? Is it through certifications? Is it through projects that you guys do? How do you get the message out to this all important message out to your consumers?
That's a great question. And it's hopefully we want to create an experience for the consumer that's like peeling the onions. We can't say everything in one shot. So it's a discovery journey. And as I said, it stacks up on, it's a stacking process. First, on package, usually consumers, they want to feel a need. And so what is this product going to do for me right now to help me with my consumption needs? And then and then we use the web, we use LinkedIn, we use the social channels to communicate that. One thing I do want to say though, I'm a big believer to not communicate unless our house is in order. So I don't like communicating something into the future as much because there's so much out there saying by 20 something we're going to do something, which is great. For us, we've taken the philosophy of once we get it done, we go out there and share what we've done. So I think there's a bit of a credibility that we want to build with our consumers, that we show that we've done it before we go talk about it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Sanjay, how do you guys communicate your sustainability to your consumers or your stakeholders?
Yeah, again, a really great question, and I would split it because we have 3 or 4 different levels of communication. I would start with stakeholders as our shareholders or investors, right? They're investing in our company, and 10 years ago, if I were to take my shareholders report or the annual report of HSBC, I think there would be one page with a very small font at the bottom of that report, which would talk about ESG and sustainability. And then fast forward to, let's say, end of 2020, the report which got released, I think, a month ago, we have now started printing and publishing a report which is specially on ESG. And that report is 25 pages long. It talks about what is it that we want to do, what is it that we are doing, how are we going to measure ourselves, what are some of the key performance indicators, and what is the path forward, which will help us to become a formidable force from a sustainability standpoint. So the framework that we discuss internally is out there for investors to see. From a client perspective, when we talk to a client and say, we would like to do some business and we would like to, let's say, talk about a financing need that we have, the first thing we would do is we would give him a questionnaire that he needs to fill out on his obligations from a ESG standpoint. And then we define whether he's a good client for us or not. And based on that, we then define, can we now start offering a bond offer to him where they can then make electric vehicles, and then we would price the bond for a product which is sustainable, which is a different pricing from making a traditional car. So we have now started making a difference in our offering depending on who the client is and depending on what product that client wants to offer to his or her customers, and that will then define the financing terms. So these are some of the approaches we are taking for our stakeholders, both from an investor standpoint and from a client standpoint.
Okay, no, thank you. That's very enlightening. So, but I want to put you guys on the spot a little bit. Both your organizations are doing great work. It's exemplary work, in fact. But we all have to be careful about greenwashing, right? It's something that it's very, very easy to slip into. I've seen the best organizations make mistakes. How do you guys ensure that you're walking the talk 100% of the time? What kind of mechanisms do you put in, or how do you ensure that everything is as you say?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's it's for us. it's simple in terms of the fact that let's not talk about it or publicize it until we get it done, get it actually done, verified that we've done it. Then we go out and say, here's what we've done. And our belief, our philosophy is that we then need to share how we did it with others, because that's how we can get others, inspire others to do it as well. So I think that's the way that we are approaching it. We do see, shortcuts that are taken by small and big companies in order to get to a quick tagline that they can talk about and get some check marks and win some consumers. That happens. Unfortunately, that's the reality. But overall, I'm optimistic we'll have some of those. But I think overall, companies are trying their best to do the right thing. So I know there's greenwashing, and we can't wash it away. But overall, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, great. And Sanjay?
Yeah, I would like to say, let's think of what is greenwashing and what actually gives room for greenwashing. If you think about greenwashing, it partly comes from lack of awareness. It partly comes from lack of subject matter expertise. And for a big chunk, it comes from lack of superb measurement standards. Because we can't have all these three things in place, because this is a journey and we have really just started warming up, I would say we don't call ourselves perfect, especially while we are still fixing the measurement part. And hence, if you ask me, do I think that we are 100% comfortable that there is no greenwashing in all the things that we do for our clients? I'm not sure I would be able to, making that claim. However, within what we know in terms of standards and measurements today, do we apply the strictest standards? The answer is yes. Do we partner with people? So instead of just reinventing the wheel and trying to invest in resources just within the bank, we start talking to a lot of external agencies like yourself, for example, and other places. Like there's a very big school of thought which is called the STBI, Science-Based Targets Initiative. It is the new standards, or relatively new standards on everything sustainability. There is a task force for climate-related financial disclosures, which apply to financial institutions, not just banks. And we are now partnering with all of these like-minded bodies. Some of those bodies are even quasi-regulatory in nature. And we are exchanging information and knowledge through each other's experience. And that's where I think we are getting better and better. And what was greenwashing and the negative connotation 5 years ago, I think it is diluted and it has become significantly positive as time passes by.
Okay. Thank you both. And so what are some of the most successful partnerships that you guys have developed to reach sustainability goals? Are they private, public, as in government, or business to business? What's really worked for you? Sorry, Nima.
Yep, I can go. For us, given that we are a manufacturer, where we find partnerships really successful is upstream. So working with our suppliers is where we have really started to invest with our suppliers. And it kind of there's a couple of and it's both strategic in terms of the business and continuity of the business and stability of our supply chain, as well as we can have a lot of positive impact through our supply chain. An example of that is we use a ton of oats for our products, and so we're working not only with the mill that is we have a very close partnership with the mill that prepares the oats for us, but we have the 40 or so farmers that grow the oats for us. We're working with them, and we're in the process of creating a partnership with them so that we can move them towards regenerative organic oats. So that's the type of partnership I think that really that's in our we can reach and we can impact. We've done that. We do that on packaging with our packaging suppliers. So our world, our sphere expands to the next bigger circle outside of us, which are all the inputs. And we really try to partner with, take the top 20 supplier that supply 80% of our inputs and try to create where can we impact them. And hopefully from that relationship, the changes that happen or the initiatives that we deploy, they can also then spread that out to their customers. So,
and Sanjay,
from my perspective, I would say a few things. Internally, we are actually investing a lot into ourselves to becoming smarter on everything sustainability related. I don't think we had official designation as Chief Sustainability Officer up until a few years ago. And now I think we have an officer in every single country, in every single part of HSBC, who are not just the subject matter experts, but also industry insiders. So there could be guys who have worked in the cement industry 10 years ago, and they have now become sustainable officers because they know how notorious the cement industry can be from a greenhouse gas emission standpoint or a carbon footprint standpoint. So this is an example of a whole lot of resourcing and money that we are spending towards how do we solve for this internally. From a client perspective, if I were to just take an example, we helped one of the biggest cement companies, which is a Swiss cement company, to raise $2 billion through a bond issuance. And the condition for us was, look, we can help you to do the bond issuance, but we actually don't like your industry. Now, we understand that you have a mindset and you're going to do certain things by way of recycling and renewing and everything else to make your life better. But for that, you need to have an additional machinery in your plant to be a little more renewable. So we are going to fund that machinery for you. However, 1 year later, we are going to come back and check, have you created a positive impact to the planet out of that or not? And if not, then we are going to change your pricing, and the premium that you're going to pay for that bond issuance is going to be higher than what we are committing today. So we start with a favorable pricing, and I think it is one of the questions out there. We certainly do favorable pricing for clients who are sustainability conscious, but we don't let them off the hook by saying, yeah, you gave me a nice paper on sustainability and that's all good. We go back after a while to really making sure that they are doing what they promised us they will do in the future.
Thank you for that. I mean, both of you have, again, very different companies, and you work on very different types of products. And the impact that you're having on your stakeholders is also very different, as you both just explained. Do bigger companies have an advantage, Nima, when we're doing this? Or Sanjay, do smaller companies have an advantage? Is sustainability better done by, at a grassroots level, or is it done, by these multinationals pushing the agenda out wider? What do you think will work?
I think this is where we got to be for us to make good progress or great progress. I believe we need everyone, all hands on deck. So I love it when I see what in our space, in the consumer packaged goods space, I see some of the initiatives that the big companies like PepsiCo, I was reading that they're trying to work on with the potato farmers that feed into the Lay's chips and the work they're doing there. So obviously, when those companies make, even if they got to make a 5% push towards sustainability over I think it was 7 million acres of land, that's huge. So we need them, and as long as My only concern is that greenwashing, as long as it's not just about the PR, because they're so good at getting their message out there. And I hope that there is real substance and measurability, but let's assume there is. And if there is, I love it that they are getting in the game. Mars has made a $700 million investment on unlocking biodegradable plastic. Nestle is doing a ton of stuff with cocoa farmers. So there's a lot of activity, which is fantastic, and we'll tag around. We need everyone. So it's not big or small. We need everyone. The citizen, the individual, the small business, the medium-sized business, and the multinationals. We all play a part. And you can't, and I don't want to say one is more important than the other, because everyone's got a role to play in this. And we can't just say, okay, let the big multinationals do it and we'll just relax because they have such a big impact. I think we all have to take it seriously across the spectrum.
Great answer. Sanjay?
I 100% echo those views, Nima. I think of all the questions that we have covered thus far, in my mind, this is one which I'm most passionate about, because I think the messaging and the response to this question is a really important one, which is actually it is not one or the other. And they are both, to me, complementary. And to me, when you have a small business and you're a local business, that's where innovation starts at the grassroots level. And the minute you start embracing those good business practices and everything, sustainability within that business, that's when it has the chance to going global. And hence, I think it is an example of that is, I'm not saying it is sustainability or not, but Apple designed the first iPhone in a small town called Cupertino, and now it has become a global phenomenon. So it has to start somewhere, and when it starts, it is grassroots. And that's when it has the potential to go big in a significant manner, and that starts moving the needle. And hence, to me, the innovation is local, whereas the outreach and the scale is global. And that is where, for you to be global and you to be scalable, you need to making sure that you are selling a product or you're making a product which is sustainable and it is going to live for the next 20 years. One example of that, which I really like and I practice myself, is I don't buy clothes when I don't need to buy clothes. There is less than 1 percentage point of the materials that we have through everything clothes in this entire world, which is a $1.9 trillion fashion industry, which ever gets recycled. And yet we keep on buying clothes just because we get bored out of doing nothing else. And that is something that I really want people to think. If they don't know what they want to do with their used clothes, please don't go and buy new clothes. Otherwise, there is a very high chance that your used clothes are going to end up in a landfill somewhere in some part of the world. And hence, extremely important that we become curious consumers, we become conscious consumers, and that is what drives behavior. And that's where you start as a community, and then it becomes a global phenomenon.
So, well, that kind of leads me on to my next point. Thank you for your answers, which is that we live in a world where sustainability is important. Consumers demand it, but consumers can only understand things at a certain level, right? As Nima said, there's only so much space that you have on your packaging. The rest of it has to go into your website. Consumers have to go there and look things up. So how do we educate our consumers? What role should we as companies, what role should our organization or our brands really play in this idea of educating the consumer? And what do you think is important? What messaging is important in this communication? Nima,
that's a great question. And I go back to the micro level or the individual level, and our purpose, my sisters and I, The purpose of our organization is to inspire a healthier and a more compassionate world. And we use the word inspire because we don't want to tell people what to do. We want to inspire people. And
Right.
how do you inspire? I think you lead by example. So I think that's the philosophy we've taken. And for us, lead by example means getting our house in order. So we have a business. It's a very small business. We have 450 employees, and but that's 450 families that we can educate and inspire first, right? Start
Absolutely.
with the core. We don't have to. What I say is we're joining a revolution. We don't have to lead it. We have to join it. So by joining means we got to get our part, get our home. First start with the nuclear of our home, then our business. And that if we do those two rings, that's already fantastic progress. Not to worry about then we can worry about the rings outside of that. And I think and that's where we want to start. And I think it also helps with credibility as well when you start with the internal rings and get the internal rings taken care of before we go out and try to inspire consumers. The cool thing is that the consumers nowadays want to know more. So if you make it available to them, they will discover, they will ask questions, and if we have our house in order and if we've done the right things, then they will discover that yes, there are companies that are taking these issues seriously.
Thank you. It's amazing to hear the passion in your voice when you talk about this. Love it. Sanjay.
Sure. I just want to spend one more minute just extending what you said, Nima, on, let's say, food consumption. Today, when we buy something from a supermarket, I think we check for three things. What are the ingredients? Where was this product manufactured? And who manufactured? Because that company does tell you a little bit more about, whether the company or the manufacturer is a responsible company or not. What I would like to do is be a little radical and add one more note to that, which is, not just about how many calories am I consuming by consuming this product, but it should also have something which is like how we have suitable for vegetarians. It should be suitable for conscious consumers or something like that. And I think we are not yet there because we don't know how to measure what is suitable for conscious consumers. And I think that will change as time passes by. But once we have a common standard, a global standard, I would love to see a stamp on our food and beverages and everything else, where you can quickly look at a label and say, is this good for me or not? And I think that is where I would really feel good about living and surviving on this planet. In terms of what we do from a finance standpoint, for example, there are things that we are enabling for our clients. So let's say there is a corporate client who is buying and selling of garments. We finance his business. And as part of that financing deal, we now say to those small and medium enterprises that I'm now going to offer a platform to you where as and when you get a person or a factory to make clothes for you, I would want you to ask where was the textile for that garment procured from. So he then needs to go to his supplier. When he goes to that supplier, I want then you to ask where was the yarn produced. Once you get to that stage, I want to know where did the cotton come from. And there are already existing technologies out there where you can have a nanomolecule in the fabric of the cotton, which traces every single part along the way until you finally wear the garment. So if it is almost like a barcode reader. You can have an app on your iPhone which would tell you what was the origin of that cotton all the way through the manufacturing process to where it was finally sold and where you started wearing that piece of garment. So these are things that we are enabling from within the industry. And these are standards that we are setting for the manufacturing, especially the manufacturing businesses.
Great. So Sanjay, to take your point about the labels, and again, just to step back into this idea of how we communicate with consumers. If we take everything we do has consequences, right? We have to utilize some electricity in our production, and there is, of course, carbon that's created. There are externalities that are always created. How do we as companies try and prevent or try and limit the damage that our own businesses do? Nima, how much emphasis do you put on the science? How much emphasis do you put on the trying to really understand how far the damage goes, or how much good your company is doing?
Yeah, I think measurement, a meaningful measurement is a key starting point. As Sanjay also put out there, we're still at this stage where we're trying to wrap our head around or really feel confident about the measurements that are in place, and it's very difficult. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult task. And it's not something that businesses like us have to solve on their own. And that's where we aligned ourselves with the Science-Based Target Initiative. And so they have, and then have worked with consultants. So I've gone out there and hired consultants who've done this before, and lean on external expertise to come inside and help us measure. So there's lots of tools out there now that help us with the measurements, which is fantastic. We're also starting to do life cycle assessments, which is a great thing, because you just look at a pen, for example, and you think, well, I just bought this pen, but there is a whole history for this pen to get here, and there's probably a couple of thousand years after this before it gets into nature. So then really starting it's understanding the true impact of every product that's manufactured is a great starting point. And our philosophy is we don't have to figure it out. We've hired great consultants, aligned ourselves with organizations like Future Fit, like Science-Based Target Initiatives. They have a ton of resources. There's a lot of database, and it's just putting our money where our mouth is and getting to work. It's hard, it's complicated, but it's doable. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing, is that you don't have to be perfect. Just move in that direction. So let's make incremental progress, and at the same time try to perfect the numbers. But as long as we're moving in the right direction, I think for us that's progress versus perfection, I think, is a key thing in this initiative.
Great, thank you, Nima. And Sanjay?
I agree with that. I think if I were to just look at it from two different perspectives, right? From a consumer perspective, it is extremely important that you become that curious consumer, and you start becoming aware of what is it that you are creating by way of footprint with every single move that you make or every single step that you take. It is very important that it is high time you start making the difference, and you know your terms and start differentiating between what is an organic egg versus a free-range egg versus a cage-free egg. There are a lot of nonsensical terms out there, and you need to start making a difference between what's real versus what's fake. And hence that consumer awareness is, I think, going to drive a lot of good practices in time to come. And I'm confident that will happen. The second dimension is the regulators and the banks can really make a difference. So if you're a bad company, or if you cannot start meeting some of those measurements and gold standards, you should not be allowed to list on a stock exchange, or you should not be allowed to raise money through a bond issuance. And a banker should not be allowed to support those businesses. And unless and until bankers say that I will only do 100% sustainable financing, the clients would get carried away and find loopholes in accessing some of those financing needs. We as a bank, for example, have said we are going to spend close to maybe $750 billion. It sounds like a whole lot of money, but it is actually not, because of the scale of the operation, global operations as a big bank that we are, in the next 10 years, which will be 100% sustainable finances within what we measure as sustainable today, right? So the measurement may not be perfect, but whatever is the benchmark, we are respecting that benchmark. And as the time evolves and the benchmarks evolve, we will embrace those benchmarks. So that to me is quite futuristic. And I'm quite excited to see how this plays out in the next 5 to 10 years.
And I just want to raise a question that was put down by one of our viewers. So Hango wants to know, how does the supply chain crisis affect your sustainability plans? It's very easy for us to talk a good game when things are easy, and things are going smooth. But during a pandemic, you have limitations on the type of materials you can use. You have prices going through the roof. How are you guys addressing this, and how do you stay true to your convictions? So, Nima, please.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a lot of gray zone that one has to live in, and make tough decisions between fulfilling customer orders versus being sustainable. And I think to me, sometimes it's the lesser of the evil that you have to make decisions on in the short term. We can't get, I think it's progress versus perfection, as I said, and we can't get it right, maybe not right now, but learn from that and make sure we plan better next time. For us, the way we're also approaching that is you take learnings of what is not working today and try to rebuild the supply chain in a way so that we don't, if there is a crisis, we don't have to fly stuff over because the Suez Canal is clogged, and that's the or maybe source more locally. But then you look at sourcing. So I was looking at, for example, let's go to plastic materials. You look at, we can get printed packaging sourced locally, but I was challenging our team to know, where does the material get manufactured? Where does the resin get made? So if you look at it, ultimately, the supply chain is extremely complicated and it's highly globalized. So even though you think you're doing something locally, there's got a global stretch to it. So it's not as easy as it looks, and it's progress versus perfection.
Well, thank you for a very honest answer, Nima. And you're absolutely right. It's sometimes we do get caught up in trying to be perfect, and we end up losing sight of the progress that we've made. And Sanjay, how would you address that?
Yeah, but just share one personal discussion I was having recently with someone very senior in Australia, in the Australian government, in fact. Over dinner, we were talking about what does Tasmania as a state do for the GDP. And the answer was two things: tourism and seafood export from Tasmania into all parts of the world. Obviously, with COVID, they were pretty stuck with both the things, because there were no inbound tourism allowed at a federal level, let alone Tasmania, for the entire country. And there was no seafood export because of supply chain crisis, as we're discussing here. What did Tasmania do? They actually started speaking to a few airlines, and they say, you know what, you fly planes. And now I'm having trouble because the scheduled flights, because they don't have seafood, has to be fresh, and it has to be transported from A to B in less than 12 hours. Those flights are not flying anymore. Why don't we do charter flights where the frequency may not be the same, but instead of just having my cargo haul underneath the seats or the passengers, I'm now going to have frozen boxes on the seats itself, and then you fly the plane. So this is, just dealing when you have a crisis and you don't know how to, stay alive and stay afloat. Yeah. But these are solutions that come about. And I'm not saying that supply chains should start doing this and this would be the future, but these are ways and means of how people have gotten creative. Supply chain and the associated logistics, in my mind, is one of the most ancient thing by way of process and procedures, which has not changed. And I think a whole lot of that is going to change as time passes by. A lot of that is going to get blockchain. So today, if I were to finance a document or I were to discount a bill for one client of mine who is in this business and who is supplying from A to B, I expect that client to DHL the original documents from that place to my bank. And that is insane, because just imagine the carbon footprint I'm creating by way of that. And second is the delay that is causing for that person to then get that cash and do something else with that money. That is changing, and we are enabling that through a B2B platform where all of that is now on distributed networks and ledgers in some shape and form, which is all blockchain. And that is now giving us a lot more comfort in how we deal with our clients and our customers and suppliers and whatnot. And I think that is the future of supply chain. Supply chain today is going to look very different in 3 years. It is not going to take 30 years even.
Thank you. And that leads me to, a very important question. And I'll ask that before we get into some of the questions that have been raised by the viewers. So what's the future for creating sustainable and earth-friendly businesses? What innovations do you guys predict will make a big impact in the coming years? And you don't have to limit it to your own business, but where do you see the big trends to be? So Nima, please.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a bit controversial, but I like the carbon capture technology that is out there, because I think we need I'm a big believer in the mopping the floor as well as closing the tap. So we've got a lot of initiatives around closing the tap, but I'm also would like to see some mopping the floor, meaning some restoration and some innovation that tackles restoration, speeds up restoration, because we can't wait a couple of 100 years for restoration to happen. So where can technology and innovation come in to truncate the restoration period? And that would be, to me, it's just in general. I think that's where I would see some exciting developments.
And Sanjay?
I would say, going back to the principles, reduce, replace, remove wherever you can. In addition, I think we also need to start defining responsibilities around who is driving sustainability, because it may not work that every single person owns this. And what I mean, I suppose, as an example, is in the way I do business, 30% of my performance indicators. So at the end of the year, if I have to define whether I've been successful or not, 30% of that success is attributed to what have I done for ESG. And I think that is just one example of many different ways of how to slice and dice this, because every person needs to play a role, and that role and that responsibility has to be preset and predefined. I would say regulators are also equally responsible, other than governments, because governments may say something and things could change as time passes by, either due to change in powers or not. But if you have regulators who are a constant, then I think they are a bigger and a more effective influencer in making this to be a better place to live in.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to just start referring to some of the questions that we received via LinkedIn. So Saurabh there has asked, how can the customer benefit from reducing plastic waste without overdriving plant-based products? He's keeping everything focused on plant and trees, and should nations which consume or overconsume plants without affecting greenhouse gas emissions? So I think basically the question he's asking is, how do we address these problems without creating bigger problems in turn, right? We end up We end up
question.
striving after one solution, and then we cause even bigger externalities from that.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's I think ultimately, to me, there is an element of a correct restoration that has to happen as well, so that we take into account the externalities. As far as going to plant-based, I think it's not a one-dimensional solution. It's not like taking plastic out and eliminating plastic and replacing it 100% with plant-based. I think we may still use plastic. It's about, can we use technology to make that plastic biodegrade in the environment in a safe way? So you're right, we have to be careful of the impact of saying, okay, all this plastic consumption, we're now going to use corn-based plastic, and so now we have to plant all these corn fields in order to make this PLA material. That's not going to work. I agree with you, and I think people, hopefully, I know everyone's aware of finding that balanced solution.
I would say the keyword there, as to exactly your point, Nima, is recycle. And there are a lot many ways of recycling plastic. One of them, I know, a dear colleague of ours in YPO. He has a company which takes all the plastics which would otherwise end up in landfills, and he recycles that plastics and makes them into small pellets, and that then can be used for anything new that you want to make from that recycled plastic. And it has, in fact, no limitations and no boundaries. One example of something that we have just announced in HSBC is we are going to have recycled plastic for every single piece of credit card we issue in all parts of the world in the next 3 to 5 years. So just imagine how many millions of credit cards we issue on an annual basis. And we are now committing to every single one of those cards to be made from recycled plastic. So it's not that, plastic should disappear. It's about how are we embracing recycled plastic such that we are not creating further damage to the environment.
Funny you should say that. I actually got a message today from HSBC saying that my new card is on its way. So, guys, I mean, you're both passionate individuals. You're both striving towards this. What does sustainability truly mean to you, and what kind of future do you want to leave for the next generation? I mean, what is your vision?
I'm going to be quick on this one, but touch on something which we didn't discuss, which is the people element, and I don't think we can have sustainability without eradicating inequality, poverty, because when you have those social systemic issues, it's hard to tackle sustainability. So I think for me, there is a people as well as a planet, and they're both together. We can't just save the planet and not, because if people are hungry and people have to survive, they don't care about sustainability. So how can you have 3 billion people that do not have access to daily or proper garbage removal in the world? And so that, that live in poverty, you can't solve, we got to solve that alongside with sustainability, or, inequality, whether it's race, gender, all of that those have to be solved alongside with our planet and sustainability. So it's all part of sustainability. They're all linked together.
I would say from a personal standpoint, just be a curious and conscious consumer. We have had a few examples, and we touched upon this earlier. So just be a responsible consumer. From a business standpoint, always remind yourself to think of your business as a force for good, and don't think of sustainability as an additional cost item. which is going to eat into your profits. I think it is an important driver for you to improve your profitability in the near future. And hence, it is not a cost. To me, it is an opportunity to do better.
Great. Thank you, Sanjay. And one last question is that as members of the larger YPO community, it's a community that includes more than 30,000 members in 142 countries. What do you feel are the benefits of being part of an organization like YPO, and how has that helped you, founders and business leaders or entrepreneurs such as yourselves? How has that helped you really make an impact worldwide?
So I'm very new, and I joined during the pandemic. So it's a bit of I haven't been able to network, and I'm looking forward to getting to know the members of YPO. I believe that it's built of very aspirational a lot of problem solvers, a lot of aspirational individuals. So I think we need to get, hopefully, the voice of sustainability embedded in the organization, and more activities, more initiatives, more communications around it. And it's 30,000 businesses as well that are part of this, if not more, part of this organization. So it can be used. I'm optimistic, and I'm sure there's a lot of work that I've already gone into it, and I'm looking forward to doing my small part in contributing towards that.
Right. Thank you, Nima. Sanjay.
I'm curious, how did the organizers choose both myself and Nima, who are relatively new into the organization? I hope there is no conspiracy behind that. But I am 1 year and 1 week into YPO. It feels like 10 years plus another 1 year of experience and sharing of great life experiences in YPO. I have to say, COVID limitations has stopped me from meeting people in person, but that has not stopped me from meeting at least one new YPO in some part of the world on a Zoom call, which really keeps this lifelong learning journey on. It is an extremely powerful organization, because if we were to just sum up the value of all the businesses that we run within the 30,000 members, I think we would be we would be one of the top countries in the world from a GDP standpoint, if we were to just think of that number as a GDP. So very, very powerful. And I think this is one of the best gifts I have offered to myself by joining YPO.
Oh, that's a great plug-in for YPO there. But thank you, gentlemen. It was, it was a very informative talk. Thank you for answering these questions so, forthrightly and with a lot of passion and emotion in there. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your views. So for everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please let us know by sharing it with your friends, followers, and connections. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and other social media, whatever you're on, so that you can be one of the first to learn about the next upcoming episode. Thank you for watching, and I would like to wish you all a very happy Earth Day, and good luck in whatever you do to restore yourselves, your families, and Mother Earth. Thank you.